Thank you. Okay, guys, you're going to have lunch eventually if you listen to this panel, and I hope to make it not too excruciating and interesting. So usually, I would leave these two guys sometimes to introduce themselves, but I will do it for them for two reasons. One, because Viktoria, she is the Businesswoman of the Year 2023. She doesn't need an introduction. She's a celebrity here. Great. And Lucas is a co-founder of Bitpanda. If you don't know what Bitpanda is, you're clearly in the wrong place, especially here in Cyprus. And now, recently, is the CEO of Bitpanda Technologies, okay? Great. And I'm the guy who is trying to make up for an agenda that went way out of control. So stick with me, okay? So, first question. We are going to talk about a very complicated relationship between banks and, I want to say, the crypto world in general, which looks a little bit like Game of Thrones to me, right? So they started like being completely against, shortly understand that they could bring benefit one to each other, and now maybe collaborating a little bit. And this is an assist for Lucas, but I would say, why don't you, Vic, give us a little bit of your own experience, because you talk with these clients every day, that they must have tons of questions and not a lot of answers.
Yes, and they are very creative as well. So I can bet my life, if I give €1,000 cash to anyone here, it's not going to turn up on the tax declaration next year, right? So here immediately we need to see that people are very creative and people don't like to pay tax, right? These are the two facts of life. Now, if you're a government, you're responsible to maintain a healthy society. You need to pay the policeman who comes out and saves you. You need to pay, certain things. So you need to make sure that first, people are paying their taxes, and second, no one can commit crime. So who is going to enforce this? Who is handling the funds? Who is handling the funds? The bank. So the two main purpose of the banks globally is to stop you to cheat your taxes and stop you to do criminal activities. So if we understand this, then we can really see that why is it such a threat that there is something which I don't really understand what it is. I can't really control it, but I can see that people are using it for payments, investments, bypassing the system left, right, and center, and obviously it is a threat. Not because the banks are trying to control money. Yeah, of course, banks are trying to control money for a reason. And if we understand that this is basically the background of every bank's decision towards not just the digital assets, but also because of the voucher system, because of the cash, because of anything what people are using as a form of payment, then you start to realize that, that is the reason why we need to have regulation. And my personal opinion is that this blockchain started up beautifully. It's a decentralized system. It's transparent. It should be helping the understanding and should be helping the government to achieve these two main goals, not to allow you to cheat tax and not to allow you to commit crime. However, it really backfired because of the anonym perspective of how people can actually move funds without being controlled. Now, when I'm talking to a lot of clients, that mainly like 2 years ago, everybody was, you know what, we get paid in Tether, that's great, I'm going to hide it. Yes, but the problem is that it's tattooed on the blockchain. So eventually, when the tax office has the capability and the technological advancement, they will be able to follow that, this is where you didn't pay your taxes 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and 20 years ago. So if we understand the crypto assets and all that kind of digital assets from this regulatory perspective, it gets a bit of a different spin. And as I said at the beginning, people are creative. There are going to be ways. Yes, of course, the current banking system is far from perfect, but this is what we have, and this is what we need to take the most of.
Thank you. Lucas, you are actually trying to reconcile these two worlds a little bit. So let's try to integrate in your answer how this idea actually came, because it must have been triggered by some of these conversations, right?
Sure. So first of all, great to be here today. The most important topic to understand is that normally in the past, innovation, especially also in the banking space, was always coming from the banks or from financial institutions or anything around that. The topic in that case of cryptocurrencies was or is that technology innovation adoption was suddenly coming from mass market retail without an involvement of any institutions or any larger existing industry. So that's an interesting thing, especially if you see a look on crypto as an asset class, less as a payment token system, besides probably stable coins. Also, asset class adoption was in the past always driven by institutional adoption, and retail then later has jumped on the train, right? Crypto exactly the other way around. So what we experienced simply is a very retail-driven adoption or waves of adoption over the last 10 years actually for crypto. Crypto in different kinds, because tokens on the blockchain cannot just be stated as all are cryptocurrencies. There are cryptocurrencies, there are stable coins, there are security tokens, which is an even different kind of token class. But if we think especially about crypto, that was always this stepchild, especially from a compliance and risk perspective when it comes to financial institutions and regulations over the last 10 years. Why? Because no clear regulation out there in any way, a lot of risk averseness from the institutions you just mentioned, and in that regards, there was this whole crypto sector always being taken, or was not included in the end in the existing financial system in that way. Still, people started to use it more. So, and out of that, Bitpanda was founded in 2014, so roughly 10 years now in the game. What we learned is that retail users are especially interested in that asset class to invest in, to utilize it, to use it, actually, cryptocurrencies, due to one main thing: low barrier of entry. You can start very, very low, started from €1 onwards to buy some fraction of it. You can send it around very easily, and you can also trade it 24/7. All three characteristics which until now were not possible with other asset classes and existing asset classes. Long story short, things have changed over the last couple of years, and especially we in Europe are for the first time ever, I would say, when it comes to financial market regulation, on the forefront of innovation. Because we are the only continent, or at least the European Union, more or less the only legal sphere of creating a forward-looking framework with regulatory clarity called MiCA for crypto, which is now driving actually institutional adoption. Institutional adoption that banks across our continent are looking about how can they start offering crypto assets. And these are fintechs and neobanks, like for example N26, who launched a crypto offering last year, or on the other side, also more and more traditional banks actually are thinking about how can they offer crypto trading services or tokenized assets or other ways about interacting with blockchain due to suddenly that regulatory clarity.
So, you know, unless you're a financially savvy or a crypto expert, understanding half of the conversation that, you know, both of your sort of intervention will be complicated, right? And we always talk about financial literacy for classic financial services, right? In this case, it's even more complicated, right? So how important is obvious, is super important. But what are you guys, you as a Bitpanda actually doing? And what do you think is the role of the banks, Viktoria, in sort of nurturing, you know, this type of very special competence for the investor to be able to be mindful in this kind of dangerous sometimes, you know, there are a lot of people lost a lot of money, okay? And on the other side, for banks, to educate their clients in this habits of investment, which is very different.
I'm not quite sure if this is the responsibility of the bank, because the bank already has a lot on their plate, right? I need to make sure I know where the funds are coming from. I need to make sure that this guy is legit. I need to make sure that all my data is up to date. Otherwise, I'm losing my license. And if something falls through the cracks, I'm going to get penalty, and I might even lose my license. So adding to their responsibilities involving education, I think it's a bit of a far-fetched situation. So obviously for the banks, it's much easier to say, I don't know this, I don't trust this whole new technology, you know, but better stop the whole thing. And when the regulation comes and I'm forced to do it anyway, then okay, let's deal with it when I really have to. I think the education part really lies on the person who is using these kind of digital assets. Because if you think about it, my mother doesn't use Bitcoin, you know, your neighbor doesn't really use any kind of digital assets. So if you're using something which is out of the norm, I would say, then it is your responsibility indeed to first plan your payments, understand the risks, make sure that you find the payment institutions who are happy to partner you up with this kind of journey, which is most probably not your high street bank, and overall make the relevant steps to minimize not only your risks, but how to appear lower risk for the financial institution who is still happy to take the risk with you. So I think the education really lies on the person who's making these kind of transactions at the first place.
Yeah, I'm first of all totally in your opinion. It's especially about the person. But if you go one step back and just to give you some data, the first 1 million customers 10 or roughly 7 years ago when we as Bitpanda had retail customers from the areas of Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, Italy, they invested in a high-risk asset class, in crypto, right? And all of them have not before invested in any stock or any financial market instrument. Meaning Bitpanda has now 4 million customers on the retail side, 25 million on our Bitpanda technology platform, but the masses in Europe, like really the mass market retail, right? They are not invested into financial markets. And they started with a high-risk asset class. From a logical portfolio management perspective, this literally makes no sense, right? But why was this the case? Because the barrier of entry for crypto was so, and still is, so low because you can start with a couple, with 10 euros, right? Starting to play around, starting to try it out. The access via digital platforms, online exchanges and brokerages is very easy to use, while the perception of financial market is always complication, right? Why can I only trade between Monday and Friday 9 to 5, right? Because these are the, then the market is open. Why does a market of a fully digital thing, a stock, actually close? There is no reason for, right? Crypto markets, 20% of the trading volume of the whole week happens on the weekend because it's a retail-driven market, right? And these are super interesting data points because it shows us that we need to overhaul in our financial system actually how the traditional asset class or other asset classes, equities and so on, simply are traded and are made available to retail users because that's not yet as easy, I would say, as probably a high-risk asset class. And that's an interesting aspect, actually.
And I think when we are talking about the retail investor, we need to also understand that what is the effect on society if we let people use their money however they want to do? Because obviously we are a selected financial professionals sitting here discussing these kind of things. But if we are talking about average Joe, who is putting his life saving on an advice of his neighbor, then who is going to save Joe? Obviously the society, the taxpayer. We need to make sure that he is living somewhere, he is getting back on his feet, even though that he lost his life savings, right? So the society's responsibility is to make sure that people, although they can invest their funds, there is some kind of controlled environment, because if everybody is investing whatever they want, however they want, it leads to mayhem. What we saw, for example, in the, the relevant years in the pump and dump schemes and all the market manipulation, the classic cases of the 1920s markets, which are just, repeated here in the crypto space. So also we need to really see that, yes, there are large volumes which are coming from institutional traders, and that's good because that is at least someone who is controlling an asset, who's got some kind of capability to understand what is going on in the market. But if we open up the floodgate to the retail investor, that's a whole different ballgame from the society's perspective.
Lucas, you guys are selling or developing a solution that basically sells crypto infrastructure asset class as a service to financial institutions. Name one or two, or the one or two most interesting conversation that you had. So I would like the audience to understand typically which type of bank is more sort of avid, in terms of being able to consume this infrastructure, but also in terms of conversation, what they're actually looking for. Is more a defensive strategy, not to lose all these clients that you actually have a number in, so whatever you mentioned, whatever money is on crypto exchanges is money that banks are potentially, not having in terms of asset under management, right? Is that a defensive strategy, or is it because they really believe in it?
Yeah. So
and then, sorry, Viktoria, the same. Maybe some of the Cyprus conversation, if you can
sure.
reveal.
So I think first point is if you work in a bank, if you're a responsible decision maker in a bank, the first thing actually you should always look into is how much money was from your client base, and this can be retail clients, but also corporates or affluent high net worth individuals, was being sent payments-wise last year or in the last years actually to crypto exchanges. That's a very easy exercise because the IBANs are available publicly, right? So you can simply assess how much of which volumes in the end, transactional volumes, were floating out to these assets or asset classes, right? So first thing, simply figure it out. And then in regards of conversations.
What was the number? I mean,
it really depends on the bank, right?
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
a couple of billions always, right? I can tell you simply, there was a very large Slovakian bank, and they suddenly realized that 8% of all retail payments in the year of 2021, I mean, that was definitely a peak year when it came to crypto, right? Was floating to crypto exchanges. So
8%, it's
a huge number, right? But a different topic. So I think there, you always need to bear in mind that, if you're a bank, three different things. You want to be innovative and you want to be on the forefront of innovation, and suddenly your regulator allows you that. Conversation we had in Germany, very large bank, and German banks currently are very open in regards of how to get infrastructure for tokenization, blockchain setup, how to offer crypto services also locally. Why? Because also BaFin, the German regulator, or already gave them a couple of years ago a very strict framework in that regards. So there it's about, hey, I want to be on this innovational side, and I'm allowed, my regulator is fine, let's do it. Right? Then there's other markets where you're suddenly realizing, okay, my customer base is already doing that. It was the case, for example, of Raiffeisen, an Austrian and CE banking group, which is going to launch crypto offering with Bitpanda Technology Solutions later this year. They realized that the customer base is already doing that, simply add other crypto providers, and they said, hey, investing is something of our core, especially the retail side, our core service offering as a financial institution. I'm definitely not giving that for any asset class away to any other provider. So I need to integrate that and also to offer that as an institution. And probably a third one was more from the fintech space coming. Lydia, large French payment fintech / neobank, 6 million customers roundabout, quite well known there for payments and peer-to-peer payments in France. They said, hey, we need an investing value proposition. They wanted to offer investing services, crypto, but especially also stocks, ETFs, and others, but in the same way in regards of low barrier of entry as crypto actually is behaving. Meaning you can start from €1, you can buy fractionally, you can trade 24/7. And we as Bitpanda simply exactly built such a solution so that not just crypto as a service from an infrastructure perspective can be served, but that you can trade also traditional asset classes simply via our investment service infrastructure in a fractionalized way and in a 24/7 tradability way. And they are simply launched exactly that offering for that customer base.
Viktoria, you said that your mom doesn't know crypto, but my son, 19, he asked me to start investing. He said, Dad, do you think I should start with crypto? And I said, well, first of all, inform yourself, but also trying to find the right partner to do this so that you don't need to sort of get too technologically savvy to do this. And actually, I didn't know about Lydia, but French teenagers Lydia all over the place. They don't even care about global digital banks because they want to have their French sauce, right? Which is, so now I know what to say to my son. Viktoria, please.
Well, obviously your son is a different generation than my mother, which is a bit more technological savvy than my mom, obviously. I think here we also need to really understand that how banks are handling their risk. And I will give you an absolutely blatant and you know, very vague example. But think about that. If you are a bank, you're handling different kind of portfolios. You've got a lot of low risk. You've got a supermarket. You've got a shoe shop. And this is not going to give you a lot of money because obviously there's a fierce competition on the market, but this is basically which is coming from your low risk companies. Now, we all know higher risk leads to higher profit. So then the risk guy comes into the bank and he says that, okay guys, I can see that out of the 100% low risk, I think we have a bit of a window of opportunity to accept a little bit of a higher risk client here, there, just to increase our profit margin. Even though something goes wrong, we're still safe, right? Don't overdo it, we are still fine. So then that bank has the opportunity to open up to higher risk verticals. Now, obviously doing the relevant AML, KYC policies and whatnot, but overall, those smaller number of clients can give such a large chunk of profit to the whole group. Now, if that bank is losing, let's say, the best customer, the biggest supermarket chain, then immediately the risk guy comes into the sales floor and says, whoa, 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 okay, we stop everything high risk because now we need to balance out our portfolio. So obviously this is not a public information, and I gave you a very vague example. But this puts things in perspective to understand that why certain banks accept certain kind of high-risk companies, why one day your application goes through and the other one it gets declined, and why all of a sudden the risk appetite is changed in the bank and you are getting kicked out, basically. They say that thank you for your business, but take it elsewhere. Now, the other very important part is that banks are also, you know, sometimes public companies filled with people. And I'm not talking about the biggest and the latest technological banks. I'm talking about the traditional village, local branch. Obviously, there is a limitation there in terms of technology and, of course, in terms of personal opportunity to filter out what are we dealing with here. So if, for example, Marulla in Bank of Cyprus does not have any clue how the compliance setup works around the crypto assets and what is the difference between Kraken and what is the difference between Binance, and obviously that transaction is going to be declined. Why? Because she does not want to put her neck on the line for that very transaction. Now, if we are talking about bigger banks with more sophisticated and more detailed compliance team who are more tech savvy, then that bank, if obviously they have the risk appetite as well, as we said, because of the portfolio, they're more likely to work with you. But that, again, it's not some kind of public information. So here, you as a customer, you just need to sometimes roll the dice and hope for the best. Obviously, that's what payment consulting comes into place, that we are really explaining to you that what are the underlying issues and problems with the applications and how to get accepted in a higher rate. But overall, these are the kind of things that no one really tells you. So if the bank rejects you, sometimes you get just a no. And then you're on your own to figure out what did go wrong, how can I improve, how can I cut short the time and effort and the money that I'm spending on my banking connections, because no one is telling me anything. So that's also something that when you're managing a larger group with any kind of crypto assets, that it definitely needs to be considered.
Guys, the objective of this conversation was to make you understand that the traditional banking world and the crypto asset world are closer than you think, and I hope that we reach that goal. Now, please pay attention. Is 10 minutes to something, or to 2, okay? We're going to break for lunch until 2:45, so it's a little bit couple of minutes less than an hour. please be back because there is the AI panel and 2 more, but the AI panel is one of the highlights of this day. Come back with your coffee if you know, if you're a little bit too late in the, you know, with lunch. And thank you. Join me in thanking the panelists for this very last panel. See you back in an hour. Thank you.